Yeah, so this is exactly the armor that I'm wearing right now.
Armour is a key component to any soldier throughout history, whether that's a modern soldier, a medieval knight, or an ancient Greek hoplite. But how good really is armour? Hi, my name's Adam, I'm an ancient Greek reenactor and history enthusiast, and today I'm going to present to you some of our finds at Military Through the Ages. Due to armour being very expensive or time-consuming to reproduce, it's very rare that we get the chance to test it, and that's where I'd like to thank my friend Andrew from the Greek Phalanx, who actually made his own muscle cuirass, and also made some test patches that we could test. And this is made from pretty historical materials as far as we can get today, and hammered in a traditional manner. Armour can be quite a confusing and touchy subject, as on one hand we may be told that armour worked really well and it was incredibly good at repelling weapons, and on the other hand we're told that weapons are very good and could kill people. But how could weapons kill people in armour if armour was really good? Then you get the opposite, where you see movies when armour is cut through like butter, and it's really nothing like that at all. But again, due to armoured reproductions being very difficult and expensive to reproduce, it is very rare that we get the chance and occasion to actually practically test this and show this. So this is the piece that we will be testing today, and this is made in the same way that Andrew made his bronze thorax. Let's get a look at these tests.
Now what we've all been waiting for is to see how I'd hold up here. Yeah, so this is exactly the armor that I'm wearing right now.
All right, well, it went in
about just enough to poke out the metal a little bit. So it did catch, but you wouldn't have felt that.
Yeah.
Oh, nice hit.
Oh.
You're about to get a sister there.
Again, barely a millimeter.
Yeah. She was ready.
So this armor is nice. Well done. Yeah.
So overall what's quite clear is it held up. Now it's not invincible, and that's something that's very important to consider with armour. Armour is always a compromise between maximum protection and maximum mobility and functionality. And you can see that if you're fully protected, then you're limited in other ways. And that you can see this throughout history. There's always a compromise between mobility and protection is a common one, but it's not the only one. You even see this with modern Kevlar vests. Are you better off wearing it? Yes, but do they stop all bullets? No. That sort of happens a lot with armour throughout history. Armour was very good, but it was not invincible and it was not unstoppable. Now we hit this a lot of times with multiple different stabs, but all of which are very centered and powerful boom thrusts. Basically as centered and powerful as you would get. And even still, those did not break through enough to really stab you. They probably wouldn't even get through your underclothing. And something that's really important to note with this is that in combat, it is very rare that you would get a perfect, powerful blow right into the center of the armor. It's more likely that it's a poke or a slip or something which would glance off. And that is incredibly important when we consider the strength of armour, as if we're only testing it with our maximum force and perfect dead center hit, then it is likely that that will only be 1 in 20 blows it will encounter in combat. Now, glancing surfaces as well is incredibly important. You can see this in the examples that I have here on this brass muscle cuirass and also these bronze greaves, is they're not just flat metal. They have, very stylistic in this case, but embossments and details. Now this does multiple things. It makes it look really cool and personalised, but it also adds actually a lot of strength and rigidity to the metal. Not to mention, it creates glancing surfaces which are incredibly important when we talk about armour. What I mean by a glancing surface is that it's not flat, so if a blade hits, for instance this Spartan Xiphos here, the odds of it actually sticking is very low because it is a domed shape. The blade naturally slides. Now this isn't just for handheld weapons, but this also works for projectiles like arrows or sling stones. If you were to stab a flat sheet of bronze with an iron spearhead, likelihood is you're going to do a lot of damage, but because it's been work hardened and shaped, most of the strength of the armour actually comes from the shape itself. It's a lot harder to implode a domed out piece, and it's also even more difficult for the edge of your weapon to bite and push through. Now, does that mean it never happened? No, but it means that the odds are that if you're wearing armour, especially of the top quality in the time, like the bronze thoraxes, you're pretty safe. Even when something does poke through, like in our case with our very hard, dead-on blows, it's not even really enough to really make you notice it. It's more just like a poke, and even still, you have a chiton, either wool or linen underneath that, which would likely absorb most of that anyway. This is also why we see the construction of armour have what are called stop ribs, which are sort of bent out, flared pieces. That is because if a weapon glances to the side, it will slide maybe up or to the side, and this stop rib acts as a stop for the weapon so it doesn't slide into you. So we can see that armour is really good at multiple things. It's good at stopping blunt force trauma, it's good at stopping you from getting cut, but it's also very good at just moving the weapon out of the way if it hits you. Now, lots of people seem to think that armour doesn't work or it is really difficult to wear, and one comment that I got is, isn't that armour really impractical? And a really simple answer is no, because it was worn for so long. People weren't stupid. If you wore something that was more impractical than wasn't, people wouldn't wear it, and this type of armour lasted for hundreds of years. It was evidently effective just by that, but actually being able to test it and show you that out of all of these hits, none of them went through enough to kill you, none of them even really went through enough to scratch you. Armour isn't impenetrable, but they worked a lot of the time. Definitely there are times where armour would fail, the same as there are parts that weapons would fail. But on the whole, the protection that you get from wearing a piece of armour, whether that's greaves, helmet, cuirass, any of that, far outweighs the negatives of having to wear that additional slight weight and very slight restriction in mobility. Armour worked really well. Weapons also worked really well. Another key component when we consider armour is that it's not only there to directly stop swords and spears. There are other parts in the battlefield. There are projectiles getting shot in. There are splintering spear shafts and pieces of wood. There are even stones on the ground that people can throw. Mardonius, the leader of the Persian army at Plataea, was supposedly killed by a stone getting thrown at his head. Armour didn't just have to protect you from the weapons that enemies were holding, it had to protect you from a multitude of different variables that you would encounter, and on the whole, armour did that incredibly well. I hope this video can give you a more realistic interpretation of the way that armour worked. It wasn't impenetrable, but it was incredibly good. Now, these tests weren't completely scientific. The spears weren't the sharpest that they could have been. The way that we strung up the armour didn't give the most amount of give. The hay bale doesn't give as much as a human body would give if it got hit. But even still, this is an ideal situation for weapons to pierce. There's little to no give in the target that is on. We have really open, straight, powerful hits dead into the centre, and even then, the armour held up remarkably well. Most hits that you would encounter in a battlefield would be a glance or a poke, or I can quickly get in past that shield, and it would really glance off and bounce. It's very, very rare that one would be so centered and powerful enough to punch through the metal, and even if it did, the likelihood of it being enough to wound significantly or kill are incredibly low. Now again, a massive thank you to Andrew from the Greek Phalanx for bringing all of us together at this event and also supplying the tests. Please go ahead and check out the greekphalanx.org, which is our reenactment group's website. Him and John have put a lot of effort into that. Thank you very much for watching this video. Hope that you learned something and enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.